To understand the fractured borders, disputed trade routes, and complex legal systems of the modern Middle East and the Balkans, you have to look at the massive geopolitical structure preceding them. When you dissolve the contemporary map, you reveal the footprint of the Ottoman Empire. We are currently living in the hardware left behind by an operating system that was entirely deleted in 1923. Understanding the volatility of today's geopolitical landscape requires reverse engineering a superpower that occupied the center of the world for 6 centuries. For decades, historians described the Ottomans as a Ghazi society, nomadic warriors conquering territory for religious glory. But the historical record reveals a state defined by pragmatic administrative technology, prioritizing military utility and logistics over religious orthodoxy. Examining how a frontier tribe dominated global geopolitics for 600 years requires an analysis of its structural data, its macroeconomic strategy, its systemic pluralism, and the diplomatic betrayals dismantling it. The empire's genesis was defined by the opportunistic statecraft of Osman I. Rather than engaging in costly wars with rival Turkish tribes, he expanded westward into the waning Byzantine Empire. He actively integrated Byzantine defectors and refugees into his ranks, relying on demographic diversity to build a localized state. The defining geopolitical earthquake occurred in 1453. Following a grueling 55-day siege, 21-year-old Sultan Mehmed II breached these ancient Theodosian walls, terminating 1,000 years of Eastern Roman rule. By claiming Constantinople, the Ottomans secured absolute monopolistic control over the vital land-based trade arteries physically linking Europe to Asia, specifically the terminus of the ancient Silk Road. This map shows how the Ottomans leveraged their position. They functioned as geographical toll booths, imposing aggressively high protectionist tariffs on European merchants. This pinched the flow of luxury commodities and spices, narrowing profit margins for Western traders. These insurmountable terrestrial bottlenecks forced European kingdoms to seek alternative mechanisms to access Eastern wealth. They began to treat the oceans as navigable highways rather than impassable barriers. By attempting to dominate global commerce through geographical taxation, the Ottomans catalyzed the maritime discoveries of the Age of Exploration, inadvertently driving trade away from their own lands. The empire reached its political and macroeconomic zenith during the 16th century. Ruling from the highly centralized and opulent Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, the sultans projected unrivaled authority, backed by sweeping legal reforms and massive wealth. This era was defined by the work of Mimar Sinan. Before becoming the chief imperial architect, Sinan served as a janissary military engineer. He mastered structural mechanics and ballistics on battlefields from Cairo to Persia, eventually scaling Ottoman public works to an industrial level. This table illustrates the administrative capacity of Sinan's office. With 374 major structures, including 92 grand mosques and 10 bridges, Sinan managed a government department with sweeping authority over all imperial construction. Sinan's designs integrated specific engineering responses to the environment. He embedded hollow clay jars within the walls to perfect acoustic clarity, and used a system of semi-domes and massive hidden piers to survive nearly 100 major earthquakes without structural compromise. Concurrently, the state had to protect its economic interests across the oceans. As the Portuguese expanded into the Indian Ocean, the Ottoman state produced highly sophisticated navigators and cartographers to secure their maritime supply lines. This fragment of a 1513 world map by Admiral Piri Reis represents a masterpiece of cartographic synthesis. By combining captured European charts with his own seafaring observations, Reis achieved an unparalleled level of accuracy in depicting the coastline of South America. These architectural and cartographic achievements functioned as the essential physical and navigational infrastructure of the state, serving as practical tools to maintain global logistics. Governing a territory across 3 continents meant managing dozens of distinct ethnicities and religions. The Ottomans avoided the forced assimilation common in Europe by deploying the Millet system, a mechanism that institutionalized religious pluralism. This flowchart shows the architecture of that system. Non-Muslim communities were granted the right to rule themselves according to their own distinct religious texts and traditions. Within these autonomous units, communities maintained their own schools and adjudicated personal law, such as marriage and inheritance. The leadership of each millet, the ethnarch, was answerable directly to the sultan. The system relied on a specific jurisdictional failsafe. If a legal dispute involved members of two different millets, the case automatically reverted upward to the central Islamic Sharia courts, ensuring the state's identity remained legally paramount. Modern political philosophers analyze this as a group rights model. While it severely curtailed individual liberty, proselytization and apostasy were strictly prohibited, it allowed the state to rule for 500 years without the large-scale religious wars that devastated Europe. This pragmatic pluralism functioned as the definitive software of the empire, fostering social harmony through collective obedience rather than individual freedom. During the late 18th century, a severe and existential ideological crisis emerged from the remote, harsh desert environment of the Najd region in Central Arabia. The Wahhabi movement was a puritanical reform ideology that aggressively rejected the empire's pragmatic pluralism. It sought to strip Islam of any practices it deemed heretical, including the mysticism and shrine veneration supported by the state. This doctrine merged with the military power of the Saudi family, who labeled the Sultan a heretic and seized the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. This struck at the core of the Sultan's legitimacy as the protector of the two holy mosques. The Central Ottoman military was too weak to handle this rebellion alone. The Sultan was forced to outsource the war to his powerful viceroy in Egypt, Mehmed II. The resulting conflict took 8 years and 12,000 casualties to suppress. Upon victory, the Ottomans executed the Saudi leadership and subjected fundamentalist clerics to calculated psychological torture to protect the state's moderate religious doctrine. This campaign had profound unintended consequences. Success granted Muhammad Ali the military prestige and leverage to eventually turn on his Ottoman masters, signaling the start of the empire's internal fragmentation and the rise of an autonomous Egypt. Joining World War I on the side of the Central Powers exposed the terminal weakness of the Central Ottoman apparatus. Seeking an internal collapse, the British government promised Sharif Hussein Ben Ali an independent Arab state in exchange for a military revolt against the Ottomans, a promise the Arabs fulfilled beginning in 1916. Simultaneously, British and French diplomats signed the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement. This unilaterally carved the Arab provinces into colonial spheres of influence, drawing arbitrary borders that split contiguous ethnic groups and trapped minorities across new states. After the war, the Allies imposed the Treaty of Sèvres. It was designed to permanently cripple Turkish sovereignty by partitioning the Anatolian heartland and placing the capital under foreign occupation. This provoked a ferocious nationalist backlash led by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. He repudiated the Sultan's capitulation and organized a nationalist resistance in Ankara. Kemalist military victories against Greek and French forces completely collapsed the Allied position in Anatolia, forcing the European powers to abandon Sèvres and negotiate on equal terms. This matrix shows the shift to the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne. Ataturk secured full, unmitigated sovereignty over Anatolia and abolished all foreign economic controls, formalizing the death of the empire and the birth of the modern Republic of Turkey. While Turkey secured its independence, the arbitrary lines drawn by European diplomats in the Arab provinces permanently institutionalized a framework of regional volatility that persists today. In 1924, the new Turkish Republic abolished the caliphate. The 600-year saga of the Ottoman state officially ended. Modern Balkan states frequently manipulate the dates of this history to artificially minimize the Ottoman era. By selectively choosing when Ottoman rule began and ended, state historians can make the period appear up to a century shorter, distancing their national identity from the imperial past. Conversely, in the Middle East, the late Ottoman legal code, the Majella, survived the empire. It brilliantly synthesized Islamic jurisprudence with European structural logic, providing the foundational DNA for the civil legal systems of Jordan, Kuwait, and Iraq. The Ottoman system persists as the foundational algorithm governing the legal and geopolitical architecture of the modern world.